Okay, welcome again everyone. In for a special day today. We're really lucky to have a couple of amazing people here. I'd just like you to welcome Jacque Fresco and Roxanne Meadows from the Venus Project.
And those of you back there hear me all right? Okay. I just want to tell you a little bit about the requirements that we require of you. Not to be polite. If there's anything you don't understand, ask the question. Try to tighten your answers. In other words, to give other people a chance to talk. Don't come off with long-winded discussions. Just pinpoint your problems and the things you want to know. Being polite would be offensive to me. So I want you to, if I say anything you don't understand, say, I don't get it. In other words, that's nice, you know. I don't get it. I want more detail. If I fail to answer your questions, say, you didn't answer my question. Please do that. Otherwise, we can't learn from each other. So I'm going to tell you a little bit of what the Venus Project is. Those of you that know what it is, will you raise your hands? So I guess I don't have to tell you what it is. And essentially what the Venus Project proposes is that we bring all the nations together and take care of everything on earth. We pledge allegiance to the environment and all the world's people. The end of separate nations, the end of the artificial boundaries that separate people, and the sharing of all the world's resources by all the world's people. Anything less than that will create the same problems over and over again. If few nations control most of the Earth's resources, you're going to have territorial disputes. You're going to have war. You're going to have all the problems you've always had. That's why most people think it's human nature. They think man is basically greedy, and that this is why you have problems. That is not true. I want to say this. A banker, a serial killer, and a gangster, and a priest are made by environment. If you don't understand that, in the United States, in the deep South, if you're brought up there, you'll speak with a Southern accent. Nothing you can do about it. If I say stop speaking with a Southern accent, you can't. Now, if you're brought up in an uneducated region, you're going to have things like this. Those damn niggers is the way they speak. I'm imitating them. They say things like, I'm gonna dip me a nigger and I'm gonna kick his ass. That environment, the expressions, the facial movements are picked up by the environment. It's not human behavior, it's the environment we come from which generates behavior. Now, if you're brought up in Italy, you say, come on, eat, there's a bit of food. Now, that is not, that's the way you would speak if you were brought up there. Vive la France, Deutschland over alles, Germany above all. Now, we are victims of culture, all of us. That's why we have a distorted view. We believe that some people are good, some are bad, some are creative, some are less creative. All that's bunk. Everyone can be creative. Now, they tell you in your schools that plants grow. That's a lie. They need water, sunshine, soil, moisture, gravity, all those things. Without them, the plant doesn't move. They tell you that sailboats sail. They don't sail, they're acted upon by the wind. There is nothing in the earth today that is not acted upon by resident forces, meaning your way you think, the way you move, your facial expressions. Girls behave differently than men, not because they're women. Because if a normal boy is brought up by 6 women, very effeminate women, and they say, oh, did I see a gorgeous hat? That boy will speak just that way. And if you're brought up in France, you'll speak with a French accent or a French-English accent. If you live in France 10 years, you move to Germany, you live there 10 years, you speak with a German-French accent. Not a thing you can do about it. So your facial expressions and your language was designed hundreds of years ago. That's why we can't talk to each other. We talk at one another, not to one another. Now, a lot of people don't understand that, so I'll say that the Bible, when you read it, he says Jesus meant this. He says, oh no, he meant that. And the third person says, you're both wrong. That's why you have the Seventh-day Adventist, the Catholic, the Presbyterian, because the Bible is subject to interpretation. All our language is a loused up. It's subject to interpretation, except chemistry, physics, mathematics, engineering is not subject to interpretation. When engineers talk to each other, if they talk of the tensile strength, compression strength, torsional strength, so the language is not subject to interpretation. And if you take a blueprint of an automobile from America and bring it to Japan, they turn out the same product, not subject to interpretation. So it appears that most of the language of science and technology is not subject to interpretation. When you talk to somebody, I say, I think this is what he means, and it goes through their head and comes out different. He says, that's not what I meant. Of course you're going to have trouble. A lawyer is a guy that takes language, twists it around to any way he wants to. If he's skilled at it, he can knock you out, put you in jail. A lawyer would be considered a criminal in the future. So would all bankers, and all businessmen, and all politicians. Don't forget, you're brought up to believe that King Solomon was a great guy. He had 1,000 wives. He'd be arrested today as a bigamist. So all the things that you're taught, they teach you to fit in with this culture. All civilizations are established, and they're established on the basis that kept those in power, so they still run the show. Now, I'm not saying they're good or bad, they've been conditioned to that. It seems normal to them. So if you were raised by the headhunters of the Amazon as a baby, and I went to you and said, doesn't it bother you to have 10 shrunken heads? He says, yes, my brother has 20. Is he bad? No, that's the way he was brought up. So you see, there's no such thing as thinking things over. You think within the context of the way you were brought up. If you ask an Eskimo, what do you want? You can have anything you want. He can't say a stainless steel air conditioner. It is not within his environment. So it's very hard for so-called normal people to step outside of the environment. If you ask an Eskimo, do you ever dream of walking on a palm-fringed beach with coconuts and sunshine? He said, I don't know what you're talking about. He's not a bad guy. Now, in the early days in the Roman Empire, I am told that they used to feed Christians to lions. But first they would starve the lions to make a better show. Then they would take the clothes off the Christians so it'd be easier for the lions to tear them to pieces. Now the family would come Saturday and Sunday to see Christians being fed to lions. And the kids would say, Daddy, can we come next week to see Christians being fed to lions? Daddy would say, if you behave yourself. Now, are these kids sick? No. They're normal to that culture. The Nazis, Heil Hitler, are normal to that culture. There are no good or bad people. There are no corrupt people or dishonest people, creative people, lazy people. All that's bunk. If you're raised in a society that understands human behavior, you don't have those variations. You can block them through education. Not the education you get. That's mostly propaganda. They condition a man to become an engineer, another man a chemist, another man a physicist. And when we go to war, the physicists in Germany fall in line with that culture. In Italy, they fall in line with that culture. In America, the scientists fall in line. If they were scientists, really scientists, they would wonder what war is. Why do people kill each other? What is a serial killer? What makes them that way? They don't fall in line. Your business is to listen to me, and if there's anything you don't understand, please, during the question period, question the hell out of me. Don't accept anything I say unless I can provide sources of information. So far, I just want to tell you a little bit more about people. When you study architecture, all the houses, as a rule, have a pointy roof. That's conventional. Architects do not design cities for people. They design for business. They design things that will sell. That's an ego problem. They design the tallest building. So when they invited Roxanne and myself to Dubai, they wanted me to come down and design the tallest building in the world and the most modern city in the world and a theme park. I said, why do you want the tallest building in the world? We want to be better than the United States. It's like infantile. The prince is an asshole. In other words, all these people don't understand society. They do not. You must design for human comfort, and you must design cities with art centers, music centers, cultural centers. I can only talk a little bit about America because that's where I'm from. I don't like our country. It's completely corrupt. And that's for most civilizations today. They're all corrupt. I'm sorry to say that. I don't like what I'm saying. I wish it were otherwise. So what I want to tell you is that we are brought up in a system called established. Established means it serves the interest of the lead group, the control group. What we really need is an emergent society. Emergent society means that there's no utopia, no fixed system. If I were to design a city, and that city would be a straitjacket to the kids of the future, they'll design their own cities. So if you make a statue of me, you'll hold back society. There are no great men, no great women. All people are creative, but they're not brought up to know what that means. I want to give you, most of your language should be subject to definitions, clear definitions, and we don't have that. When we say we have a great nation, what do you mean by that exactly? Another person says to me, I believe in freedom. I believe in participatory democracy. So I say, do you really believe that? They say yes. So did you vote for the Vietnam War? I guess not. Did you vote for the space program? I guess not. Did you vote for highway design, the Capitol building, procedural systems? No. That's just bullshit, I'm sorry. But they give you that to maintain control. There's no bad language either. Maybe if you young lady drop a pie, you say fiddly-dee. And man might say shit. That means I'm sorry I dropped a pie. It has nothing to do with fecal matter. There are no bad words. Your society tries to control you continuously through radio, television, news. Now, if you worked in a department store and a young lady came up and said, how much is that lamp? You said $20. She said, I'll take two. Let's say he's a good Christian. He said, if you go down the street, you get the same lamp for $10. He wouldn't be working there very long. So when they tell you that your government likes you, they're working for you, you wouldn't outsource to another country. You understand? If you outsource jobs and production for other countries, it means all they're concerned with is the bottom line, profit. And that's very disadvantageous to people. The profit system actually does design things to wear out and break down, because that's the way you keep in business. Every year you got to buy new airplanes because the old become obsolete. So war has always been good business. A friend of mine, when you're drafted into the army or you join the army to protect your country, you put your life up for the country. So they should conscript all the war industries so no one makes a buck out of war. Then it's real. On the same basis of pay of soldiers. But if you make millions selling aircraft to the army, he sells machine guns, she sells submarines, it's not honest. Now I knew a guy named Alexander P.D. Seversky, who owns the Seversky Aircraft Company. He said during World War II that that the government should buy long-range bombers to knock out the power projects in Germany. If you knock out the dams and the power projects, but if you shoot soldiers out in the field, they can keep producing munitions and bombers and airplanes. Do you understand? Even war is corrupt. It's corrupt as an operation. A friend of mine flew airplanes in World War I, and he said he flew over Krupp munition works 8 times with orders not to bomb it. He didn't understand that. He was a pilot to defend the United States. But after the war, a magazine called Fortune magazine ran an article called Arms and the Men. Probably never heard of it. And in that magazine, they said that DuPont has holdings in I.J. Farben. That's why I wasn't bombing it. So war is really not to bring democracy to other countries. It's about resources and exploitation and removal of the resources. National loyalty is really a form of stupidity. All people need clean air, clean water, arable land, and a relevant education. That means no businessmen, no advertising, no investment bankers. Relevant education means how to restore the environment and the damaged reefs. Not to, you know, I don't know if I told some of you this, but the United States Army about 45 years ago dumped 65 tons of nerve gas off the coast of Miami, near the Gulf Stream. How can you love the country and do things like that? How can you care about people and bomb their cities? We'll fire and press a button and wipe out cities. The reason people do that, they get a medal. They get an X on the fuselage of how many planes you shot down. I used to work for Ernst Udet. He became the head, one of the top brass under the Nazis. Well, I worked for him at Roosevelt Field. And I said, how did you shoot down 70 airplanes? And he said to me, I would fly above aerial combat and watch the rookies that couldn't handle planes well and knock them off. Now, what kind of a person is that? He's a war hero, great man. Eddie Rickenbacker, the same. They're bums and stupid people brought up by an arrogant society that doesn't give a shit about anyone else but the established institutions. So I'm trying to tell you something. We must join together with all nations, take care of the earth together and one another. When you think of the cost of World War II, I'm not just talking about the military cost. I'm talking about taking care of veterans after the war for years. And then all the cities bombed out, the museums and art. You know, you remember England and Germany flattened out. Take that cost, you know what that could have done? It could have housed everyone on earth in brand new housing. Build art centers, music centers, cultural centers, housing, parks. Soldiers should be trained as problem solvers, not killers. When you train people to be killers, obviously soldiers don't know what the hell they're doing because they think they're defending their country. They're building hatred for the next 20 years. When you bomb the Arab world and flatten it out, you're not doing any good. So years ago, when I was proposing this society, I said to myself, Jacque, how are you going to change everybody in the world? They all think differently. Some people have 10 wives, you know, in some nations. It's all so very different. How are you going to change them? That's what thinking is, talking to yourself. If I say, I'll see you Saturday, he says, I'll take the kids there, and I can't see you Saturday. So thinking is nothing magic. It's what you've been exposed to and asking questions. So I said to myself, how are you going to change all these people? I said, I don't know. That's the first thing you have to learn to say, I don't know. Do you think we'll ever get to Mars? Nah, not in 1,000 years. That's your opinion. Just say, I don't know enough about aeronautic space travel or the conditions on Mars to give you an answer. We don't talk that way. When we see a new airplane without wings, we say it doesn't have wings, it'll never fly. The question is, how do you propose to lift off the ground without wings? I'm a layman, not technical. If you do that, there's no argument. But if you give everybody a right to their own opinion, which is we're brought up to believe that that's the right thing, give everybody a right to their own opinion. If you live across the street from me and I see 10 guys coming out of your apartment, I can have all kinds of opinions. You can be a language instructor, an art instructor, but if you give everybody a right to their own opinion, you damage communication. Just when you ask, do you think we'll ever get to Mars? They would say, it's not my field. I know nothing about rocketry. I can't answer that. That's the way people talk in the future. They don't say, it'll never work. Scientists in the past used to write books on why man can't fly. And the Wright brothers never read those books, so they built a flying machine. They were bicycle mechanics. Now, the Wright brothers really didn't just do that. In the early days in France, some guy designed a set of wings that stuck out 3 feet on each side. And he jumped off the Eiffel Tower, and he died. And his brother-in-law wrote, "Make wings larger next time." There's no way to know. Nobody ever does anything wrong. They use whatever knowledge they have, and their decisions sometimes don't work. Now, let's talk about that. When this guy's brother-in-law wrote, "Make wings larger next time," somebody made larger wings, but he didn't jump off the top of the Eiffel Tower. He jumped off a lower region. And he flew for a while, both wings went like that. And somebody, a fisherman with a lot of rope, says, "You got to brace your wings so they don't go like that." Oh, thank you. So men build upon other men. This is going to be hard to accept. Man, this includes me, cannot think or reason. All that bullshit. If you're not exposed, if an Eskimo, if you ask him, "What do you want?" You can have anything. He says, "Well, I like a strong igloo." He's not going to ask for a prefabricated building with photoelectric cells on it. He can't ask for that because he's never been exposed to it. Then there's another bullshit word which is going to hurt a lot of you, love. Now let me tell you what's the matter with it. Is there anybody here that's perfectly satisfied with everything you've ever done? Of course not. So sometimes you like yourself, sometimes you don't. Sometimes you like yourself very much. Sometimes you dislike yourself. So when you get married, it's the same thing. Sometimes you love your husband and wife very much. Sometimes a little less. Sometimes not at all. You blow them out. So love is a fluctuating thing. It's not a fixed thing. Do you understand that? Okay. So if you're brought up with twisted values, like a guy named Albert Fish, which the nation at that time, U.S., believed he ate 45 children. And the public wanted to tear him to pieces, because they were brought up that way. But a doctor named Wortham, a psychiatrist, said, "I want to find out what made him that way so we can avoid those conditions in the future." That's much better. When your car veers to the right, you don't kick it and beat it up. Either your tire pressure's uneven or something's wrong with the steering column. You try to understand. When children beat up other people and hurt other people like a bully, that's part of their conditioning, their associative memory, the system they live under, which doesn't correct that. Schools do not teach you much. They're mostly concerned with propaganda. Most schools don't teach you how to live, find meaning in your own life, how to disagree without getting angry. That's what's needed. And as long as the world goes on this way, you're going to have cycles of war, depression, economic drop, because you believe in right and wrong, good and bad. What is really needed is the intelligent management of the Earth's resources for the benefit of everyone. Now, the only way you can do that is through technology. Everything that you have, your lights, your air conditioning, your automobile, your airplanes, all technology. Politicians can't give you that. Politicians don't know what to do. They make laws. Now that's no way to change. Say no to drugs. Well, that's not going to stop a person from selling drugs as long as there's money in it. But if you do away with the money system and build access centers where anyone can have access to the necessities of life without filling out 1,000,000 forms or appealing to Fresco, it's all available to everyone. Everything on earth is made by people that worked hard to achieve that. So a young man at Princeton got up and he said, "I don't like your system at all." I said, "I can't do anything with what you're saying. What is it that you don't like?" He said, "Well, you want to give people things for nothing." I said, "Were you born in America?" He said, "Yes." You got the airplane, the telephone, the radio, airplanes, ships, all for nothing. You didn't have anything to do with that, I'm sure, right? So I said, "Does it hurt you?" He said, no, but I don't like the idea of people getting things for nothing. So I said, are you paying your way through Princeton? He said, no, my dad is. I said, does that bother you? Does that hurt you? He says, I still don't believe people ought to get anything for nothing. So I said, okay, okay. Your dad is wealthy, as I understand it. He said, yes. When he dies, you want his money to go to the Heart Fund and the Cancer Fund, not to you, because you don't believe anybody ought to get anything for nothing. He said, just a minute. Well, they left and off the platform. So when I say people hardly know what they're talking about, because they're not brought up to be sane. They're brought up to fit in with the establishment. So it's very hard to ask people, what do you vote for? I believe in democracy. There's never been a democracy anywhere in the world. There can't be a democracy if people have different incomes. If you get minimum wage and your kid gets sick, you can't take him to a doctor because you can't afford it. So he buys a used car. The used car breaks down more than a new car, and he's up to debt. He has to take his kid to a clinic, lose a day's pay, and he's on minimum wage to start with. So how do you look at that? How can you have a democracy if mothers are not educated on how to feed their kids nutritional food? Today, they pump chickens to grow faster, put ingredients in food to color it to make it look better, and add artificial flavoring in many instances. And so you don't get the best food. In the future, the medics would be concerned with and the nutritional experts would be concerned about the food people get. Now, a lot of you have never heard of this book, 100 Million Guinea Pigs. Did anyone ever hear of it? Nobody. In America, it was a bestseller. It attacked the drug industries and showed you why the drug industries didn't use celery juice to lower blood pressure because there's no money in it. So they make these little pills, they get $2 or $3 for it. This book exposed the drug industry. And the American public, it was a bestseller, said we got to have a Pure Food and Drug Administration, people that monitor that and watch over you. So they did build that, they got that. But today it's managed by the drug industry. And people that run it used to work for the drug industry. So you see, everything becomes corrupt in a monetary system. I'm sorry about that. So when I say to you, go to your big department stores or your food stores, you'll see lots of stuff. We are now capable of producing in abundance. During the war, we gave soldiers airplanes that cost, today anyway, nearly $1 billion apiece. How come we don't do that during peace? Send every kid to college that wants to go. That would improve all nations. But if you don't have the money to go to college, you become second rate. So we say in the future, everyone will be given the best opportunity so that we can bring out the best in every human being. And if you grade children, you got a C, you got a D, you make jealousy and envy. People say to me, excuse me, I know two people from the same environment. One turned out to be a priest, the other a gangster. If environment is everything, how do you get those differences? You get those differences by playing with the youngest child, 4 years old, while the 7-year-old is at a lower level. You can't play with one kid. This is my youngest kid. You must take the older kid, put him on your lap, and the younger kid and say, this is your baby brother. Never say to a girl, why can't you be like your sister? She puts everything in her place. You leave everything all over the place. I have to pick up after you. Then the sister becomes jealous. That's where jealousy comes from. It comes from poor manipulation of the variables. In human behavior, if you give one child or treat one child as your favorite, you hurt the other children. If you grade children in school, you hurt the other kids. I got an A, what did you get? F, failure, you know. So people have different attitudes. So people that steal, all of us, by the way, are prostitutes in this system. If you sing and you sell toothpaste, you're a prostitute. If you get up and you say, I got just the house you're looking for, you're a prostitute for the establishment. So there's no good or bad people now. We're perfect reflections of the culture we live in. Again, I'm sorry about that. So if you begin to think outside the box, here's what that means. I was told by a Catholic priest who told me there are things beyond the physical, that you're trying to make the world a better place, but there are spiritual aspects. I said, what do you mean by spiritual? You mean you have no locks on your door, and you bring everyone in your home, and you feed the hungry? Oh, no. So the word spiritual is not defined by what you mean by it. A truly spiritual person carries out the teachings of religion or the finest viewpoint they can carry. Now, Jesus never wrote anything. He talked to people. And people said, I think this is what he meant. No, he meant that. So you got all these different things. And then God, let's take God, for example, the old guy sitting up in the clouds who knows everything. He's omnipotent. You don't have to tell him anything. He made every bug, every tree, every galaxy. And then Jesus proceeds to insult him. Here's where he insulted him. Just before they crucified Christ, he looks up and says, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And God said, gee, I didn't know that. So how can you pray to a God? How can you talk to God? You can't even talk to Einstein, most people. And they're always talking to God. They think, due to ego problems, that they're specially selected. The Jews are God's chosen people. The Germans are the master race. You know, all these little egocentric people think that they're put here to lead the world into a better direction. I may get shot, like Martin Luther King. He tries to do something, boom, he gets shot. Now, the people that don't get shot, as a rule, are guys like Hitler. Why don't they get shot? They have a lot of guards around, and they condition everybody in the environment to be strictly Nazis. So the Nazi point of view was to protect the establishment. All money systems, as they begin to collapse and change, they move toward fascism, always. It's part of the history of civilization to move in that direction. The wealthy people try to protect what they have. The people are told that that country is a bad country. They hate America. In a British newspaper called The Telegraph, the CIA or the Pentagon released information which says U.S. intends to bomb 7 countries, nuclear, preemptive strike. In the old days that meant sneak attack. Preemptive strike is a sneak attack. And they named 7 countries, North Korea, China, Russia. Now, if you do that, they're all going to be building atom bombs. Even if the U.S. intended to do that, to release that was stupid. So that's why a lot of people are building nuclear weapons. Not because they're bad. North Korea is building big armies, rocket ships, everything. So is China. Because we ran those headlines. How stupid can you be? Military people are not bright. Military people would be concerned with how do you bridge the difference between nations instead of declare war on them. So we will have a Pentagon in Washington of sociologists, social scientists, who are there to try to bridge the difference between nations. That's the problem. Not killing them, bombing their cities. That's not a solution. That only builds hatred for the future, if you understand what I'm saying. So I am really putting it this way. What will people be like in the future? First, they'll learn about the earth, and they will be brought up not to want to hurt the oceans or the forest or cut them down. So people say to me, will everybody be alike in the society you're talking about? In certain areas, yes. They won't hate anyone of a different color or different religion. They would not want to hurt anyone or kill anyone or rob anyone or hit them on the head and take their money. None of that. They'll be alike in that area. There's nothing the matter with being alike in the same way, if you're sane. Now, unsane means not that you lost your facilitation. Unsane means you grew up with artificial values. So most nations are unsane, particularly the leaders. Because if you ask any leader in the British Empire, you say, how would you stop cars from hitting each other? I don't know. How would you prevent forest fires? I don't know. What do you do to prevent earthquake buildings from caving in? I don't know. Who the hell are they then? What are they doing there? They tell you in America, write your congressman. You want women's rights? Write your congressman. What a jackass he is. The congressman doesn't know anything about that. When you fly in an airplane today, on a commercial airline, you don't have to write the pilot and say you've been flying at an angle for 3 miles now, straighten up. He knows his business. The navigator, when you go to Hawaii and you see icebergs coming up, you say, I thought we're going to Hawaii. You have to write him. He knows navigation. So people that fly airplanes or manage ships, you never have to write the captain of a big liner and say, look, we're going to Hawaii, but I see icebergs. You know, they know their business. Who are these people you have to write to? Must be dummies, entirely so. They should be at the forefront of human problems in government and not try to stop you from doing things, but to welcome you on the air. But what they do is manage news. If it doesn't look too good, you don't get it. I've never been on the air except once in America. But in other countries, when we were invited to Turkey, they gave me an hour and a half, and Turkey said, how do we build the first Venus project? Now, they invited us to Vienna. They gave me 7 minutes with a whole bunch of academicians. I couldn't say anything in 7 minutes. And that happened in other countries. So we don't go to any other country unless they give us a chance to present what it is we wish to present. And then you get mad at it, you ask questions, that's the way to do it. But you don't get up and you don't really applaud until the guy gets through. So when the question comes, when you guys ask questions, I ask you not to be polite and to question the hell out of everything I say. And if there's things you don't understand, you have to let me know. Now, how many of you know there are metals today with a memory? It's called shape memory alloys. How many of you saw it in our films? Okay. There are metals today with a memory. And they always ask me, who invented it? Some Swedish guy, a metallurgist, was mixing different metals together. And he mixed nickel and titanium together, and he bent it and left it on a table near a heat lamp, and it straightened out again. And he didn't sit down and invent it, he discovered it. Nobody ever invented anything. They tell you in school that somebody invented the wheel, and that was the beginning of the technical age. A tree fell over another tree, and people pulled it, and it rolled. But nobody ever sat down and invented the wheel. When that log rolled, if there was one stone in the way, it stopped the log from turning. So they shaved the bark off. This took a long time in the middle, so that the midsection was thinner, and the wheels were on the outer section. So nobody sat down and invented the wheel, or invented anything, for that matter. Now, I said, they invited me to speak at Princeton University, and the name of the subject, Man Can't Think or Reason. That made everybody angry in the university, because they all knew that men could think and reason. So a guy from the optics department said, I don't agree with you, before I even said a word. I said, well, what is it that you don't agree with? He said, man can think and reason. I said, give me one example. He said, well, there was not a camera at one time, and somebody had to think about it. Now, in China, 1,000 years ago, if you were in a dark building, there was a little hole in it, you saw people walking upside down on the wall. If you've been in a barn, which is very dark, and there's a knothole in it, you'll see cows walking on the wall upside down if the sun's out and the barn is dark. That's where the pinhole camera came from. Nobody sat down and says, got to make a camera, click. See? And now what about the negatives? Somebody had to make a negative. The American Indians used to take berry juice and squeeze it on mats they made for the floor of the wigwam. They'd squeeze blueberry juice, cherries, and so they get patterns. But if a leaf fell on the berry juice, you picked it off, there was a print of the leaf. That's where the print came from. And people walking barefoot in sand suggested the mold. You understand, when you make a mold, you put something in it? Nobody can sit down and invent anything. The first guy that tried to fly died. Probably the first 100 guys that tried to fly died. So if you do medical research and you work for 3 years on cancer and he finds out what doesn't work, I read his book and 2 years later I come up with a little bit of an approach to cancer. I get a Nobel Prize, he gets nothing. There's thousands of people just as sincere that work on problems that don't come up with an answer. You should never give a Nobel Prize to one person. All these people are hardworking, trying to find the answers. So when you start giving out medals or jobs in a beauty contest, the girl gets an award. Did she make her face out of soft material, molded in extreme beauty? Then you give her some kind of medal. But if she's born that way, what the hell is that about? So the world you live in is as full of shit as a Christmas turkey. And you're not about to talk to people and turn them around. You have to demonstrate it. The shaped memory metals that I was talking about is made of nickel and titanium. It's a wire. And if you took that wire and bent it in form so it spelled out Jesus Christ, put it on the table, put a hot lamp over it, straighten it up and put it on the table and go like that, and it'll go back to Jesus Christ. You can build a following with shaped memory alloys if you want to. Now, most people don't know where the earth came from. They don't know where life came from. And so they invented a God who made a man and a woman. Then he kicked them out of that beautiful garden. How did he do that? Snakes used to walk upright. And the snake said, eat of the fruit of knowledge. Who made the snake? God. But he loves you. Made the snake. And then he says, screw around with your best friend's wife. That's what the tempter was. So the snake was so bad that God got angry at what he created. And said, from now on, you have to crawl on your belly. So that's another thing they have about horses. The reason a horse sleeps standing up, because some holy man once asked this horse to take him across the river. And the horse said, no, you have to sleep standing up. So you have all this stupidity. Galileo found seashells on the mountaintop. He took it to the Catholic Church, and he said, maybe the mountain was once under the water and was pushed up. And the church said, no, the devil put that stuff there to confuse you. Now, anybody that believes in God, you must think that the kind of God man makes more like themselves. The guy that gets angry, creates flood, disease, that isn't God. And if you don't follow the Bible according to God's teachings or your religion, you burn eternally. That sounds more like a psychopath, not God. So, if you believe in, I asked Einstein once, do you believe in God? And he said, which one? I said, well, he knew that the Jewish God says, if a man takes your son's eye out, you take his son's eye out. An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. The Christian God says, when a man strikes you, turn the other cheek. That's what he means by which one. All these gods are jerks that man make. They're more like themselves. They get angry, create floods, disease, all kinds of things. And you say, why did the bubonic plague kill half of the Earth's population? And the church would say, we shall suffer for the sins of our parents. Scientists, when the bubonic plague began to wipe out people, they said, we don't know why that happens. That's very good. I don't know. So they found that fleas that live on rats infected people with the plague, and they began to kill the rat population and wiped out the plague. So I don't say science is perfect, but it's closer to our problems than any other system. So when man makes laws, that means they don't know how to solve problems. All man-made laws are BS, bad science. All man-made laws don't deal with problems. They make a law. What you really need is, it says, drive safely on the highway, slippery when wet. So you put abrasive in the highway so it's not slippery when wet, and take away that sign. It also says, drive carefully, school children crossing. I'm sure you've seen that. We designed a highway that looks like one comb intersecting another comb. And when the kid presses the button, the highway turns up like that. So no car can hit a kid. Do you understand that? That's what you really want. You don't want the sign out there. These dummies that are politicians are not technical. Now you're going to have to take my word for it because most of you don't look old enough. When I was a kid, trolley cars had a platform along the side. And if people were late for work, they got on that platform. And they were hit by cars. So the conductor said, get in the car or off the platform. I had a small rubber tube, not very hard to hurt you, but get in the car or get off the platform. But when people were late for work, they still remained on the platform. A lot of people were killed in 10 years. Finally, they took that problem to an engineering firm. And the engineers said, what do you want? We don't want people on the platform, so they retracted the platform. When you got in the car, it turned up. That was the end of the problem. People really don't know what to do, so they put up a sign, thou shalt not steal, don't be dishonest. That doesn't change people. You can go to Sing Sing prison, you see guys with a cross around their neck. And I remember during World War II how the minister of my church at that time, he blessed the war tanks and he blessed the soldiers. It was Catholic. And in Italy, they were blessing the war tanks there. Same priest, same religion. Religious people are extremely stupid because if you open the Bible, you'll see that Noah's Ark would have to be at least a mile long to take 2 kinds of every animal. And where do you get the polar bear and the giraffe? You know, and the ship would be so full of shit. Who cleans it out? So the stories in the Bible are not bad. They're fantastically elementary. Stupid stories about Moses lifting up his wand and the Red Sea parted. God could put the people on the other side of the Red Sea without parting it. Just go like that. And they say that God so loveth the world that he gave his only begotten Son that others might have eternal life and not perish. Well, when you examine that, the witnesses, according to the Bible, say after Jesus was good, he arose and went back into heaven. Where the hell's the sacrifice? You understand what I mean? Read your Bible. Don't take my word for it. It's such a bunch of garbage written by very ignorant people, like our language was designed hundreds of years ago. That's why I say we can't talk to each other. And that's why lawyers exist. They can take language and do whatever they want with it. So the books are available on our website. They're not our books. One is called Mind in the Making by James Harvey Robinson. If you want to know communications better, it's The Tyranny of Words by Stuart Chase. And if you get these books, they don't put society together for you, but they deal with communication. They deal with different aspects. Then there was a guy named Sir Jagadish Chandra Bose. Did anybody ever hear of him? He came to the Royal Society with new ideas, and they laughed at him. And he went back to India, the Bose Institute. When the British people, scientists, went to his lab, they were amazed, brought him back to England, and he was knighted Sir Jagadish Chandra Bose because they checked things out. Scientists don't always check things out. They say that we want to know how all of this began. Where did the word beginning come from? The Bible. So they said, what's the Big Bang? What was there the day before the Big Bang? Where did God come from? Who made him? How did he get the job? You know, nobody has that question. They all say, why do they believe in God? Because they've never been told enough about how nature works. You can take a steel ball and heat it to 500,000 degrees and it becomes a vapor, but it doesn't stop existing. It still exists as radiant energy or vapor. So in science books it says matter cannot be created or destroyed. That means that it never began. This notion about, even if I kicked a bucket, if you bury me 1 foot down in the soil, all the plants get taller above me. All the worms get fatter. So what happens at Fresco? It becomes part of something else. So the stuff you eat is what you are. Your cells, if you eat chicken or cow meat, it's turned to human cells. So the stuff you're made of is stuff you ate. Plants, things of that sort. That was always here, and when you kick the bucket, the gases go off into space, your material is eaten by worms, the soil absorbs some. I don't like that. Sure, I wish I went to a land where everything was okay, and I had white wings. Now, all the angels painted on the ceiling in church, the wings are too small. They have to be at least the length of the body. Now, if the angels flew without wings, that would be a miracle. I'd like to find out without this sort of thing. And then you take people that commit crimes and you put them in jail for 20 years or life. That isn't understanding. Judges would all be considered criminals because they know nothing about the background of the person. If you're brought up in Japan and you're told American gangster, all American gangster. In Germany, Americans, Coca-Cola and cigarettes. That's the Amerikanisch. So if you're brought up in a certain country, you're made to hate during the war. Like I used to sing in school, Pretty Parasol and Fan in Far Off Japan, how nice the Japanese were. When they attacked Pearl Harbor, I was kind of disappointed. Then there was a book called The Secrets of Pearl Harbor, which I bought. And Admiral Halsey opens that book with how we got the Japanese to attack Pearl Harbor. I never knew that. I never knew how corrupt war was. I never knew how corrupt our government was. I'm talking about America. It's one of the most corrupt countries in the world. I'm sorry about that. There's nothing I can do about it. All I can do is get up and talk this way. I am not your enemy. I'm not trying to hurt you. I'm trying to tell you that if we use science and technology, this is what I mean by that. To do a survey of the global resources. Once we do a survey of how much concrete hospitals we have, we know how many people we can treat. But if you ask Congress, what do you think, what do you think, what do you know, not what do you think? So what we would do in the future is do a global survey first of what the carrying capacity of the Earth is. And that's, the carrying capacity means how many people can live on Earth. If you say overpopulation, that's not based on a study of the carrying capacity. But if you produce more people than the Earth can carry, you'll have territorial disputes, killing, robbery, taking possessions. If few nations control most of the Earth's resources, you're going to have trouble. It's got to wind up with territorial disputes. So it's the way we operate that produce the conditions, just as you make jealousy and envy. If my wife fell in love with somebody else and wanted to leave, normal people say, you're not breaking up the home, you little tramp, you know. The question is, it means you're not meeting her needs. It doesn't mean you're bad. If the husband seeks other women, he may be tit man, leg man, ass man, hair man. Men are brought up with all these different values in this system. If you cover a girl, you're going to create problems. So I went to the South Seas when I was 21, and I lived on the island of Tuamotu for a while. It's a chain of islands near Tahiti, French territory. Everybody on the island was nude, except when men climbed trees. They wore kind of a jockstrap to prevent their balls from being caught in the branches. So everybody walked around nude. And the interesting thing about it is I never saw a native stare at a girl's body, only her eyes. When he talked to a woman, you never say, hey, get a load of that chick. That's what you get in civilization. You cover the girl. If people swam nude when they were this high, you couldn't sell pictures of a nude girl. Do you understand that? It's when you cover them up. It was just like curiosity. No kid in the islands was a peeping Tom, because everybody walked around nude. You couldn't sell a magazine, a girly magazine. You couldn't run a pornographic movie. It would have no meaning. They made love when they were able to, and nobody of us shot an eye. Interesting thing, I got to know the natives so well, I watched them make love. And they stroked the whole female, the top of her head all the way down. They had no fetishes. There were no tit men, leg men, ass men. All that's made by culture. And if you don't use that kind of language around women, you can't become equal to one another. So you have to tell them how men think. That isn't how they think. That's how they're brought up. When guys poke each other, hey, get a load of that chick, you know. That is learned in the culture. In the islands, they never did that. It's like you stroking a dog. You stroke the whole dog. You don't stop at the balls. You stroke the whole dog. You understand? So I think it's a time to open it up to questions.
Okay, thanks, Jacque. We'll take a 10-minute break. We'll come back for questions and answers after that. And you can ask all the questions you want to. Okay, thanks.